India's farmers fight against reforms. These agricultural workers demand the Prime Minister repeals controversial new laws they fear will destroy their livelihoods. But will the massive movement force the BJP to back down? I'm Ali Aslan, and today's newsmaker is the Indian farmers' protest. India's farmers make up more than half the country's workforce, and right now they are furious. Hundreds of thousands are protesting against new deregulation laws that the government says India desperately needs. On paper, the reforms sound pretty good. They are supposed to lift restrictions, allowing farmers to decide where and who to sell their crops to. So, what's the problem? Well, the thousands blocking India's highways believe the new laws are risky and favor big corporations, meaning family-owned farms could soon be forced out of business. So who's right, the farmers or the government? That debate in a moment, but first, Natalie Pahonen has this report.
India's farmers have a message for their government.
If the government won't back off, the farmers won't either.
For weeks, tens of thousands of them have been protesting across the country against agricultural reforms they say have the capacity to crush them. 3 farm bills were passed in Parliament in September, and they changed the rules around the pricing, sale and storage of crops. It's a major shake-up of the sector, and it has far-reaching consequences for millions of people. About 60% of Indians work on farms, but agriculture only accounts for about 1/6 of GDP. For decades, farmers have sold their crops to authorised middlemen at state-run wholesale markets known as mandis. Farmers would still be able to do that, but these new bills mean they would also be free to sell to anyone. But many fear they'll be left at the mercy of corporations, who will ultimately decide what they're willing to pay.
If this law is made, we are totally finished. The farmers are finished in India. Okay, if we are finished, what is coronavirus will not make us dead. Okay, this kind of laws will finish us.
These measures have been hailed by Prime Minister Narendra Modi as bringing India into the 21st century. He described the passing of the bills as a watershed moment for the agricultural sector. Some opposition MPs labelled them a death warrant for farmers. And that's led some analysts to question whether the PM and his governing BJP have misjudged the appetite for reform. Building consensus among millions of farmers was never going to be easy. Modernising the sector has been a perennial discussion. Modi says his government is willing to hold further talks, but he adds opposition parties are spreading apprehension.
I just want ease in the life of farmers. I want their progress and want modernity in the agriculture sector. Political parties should stop misguiding farmers. It's been over 6 to 7 months since farm laws were implemented. But now, suddenly, games are being played to plough one's political land through a web of lies.
Striking the right balance between deregulating the agricultural market and alleviating farmers' fears of corporate greed could prove to be one of Modi's greatest challenges yet. Natalie Pahonen, The Newsmakers.
Well, joining me now in Mumbai is Preeti Sharma Menon. She's the national spokesperson for the opposition Aadmi party. Raman Malik is in Gurugram. He's a spokesperson for Narendra Modi's ruling BJP. And in Hyderabad is the chairman of the Center for Policy Alternatives, Mohan Guruswamy. Welcome to you all. Raman, farmers have been protesting the new laws aimed at loosening the rules on the pricing, storage and marketing of crops. This amounts in essence to nothing short than a deregulation of the Indian agricultural sector. What is the reasoning? What is the thinking behind this move?
2-3 facts which needs to be put on record. Number one, this is not deregulating the agriculture sector. Probably India's agriculture sector is one of the most protected agriculture sector in the world. We have seen a lot of protest in the European Union as well as the Northern American continent about the state of farmers. Now, what we have done here in these particular laws which are being misinterpreted and being, some political vested interests are taking and some other people who have failed in their referendums, which they were trying to orchestrate from outside India. Now, what has happened is primarily is that what we have done here is we have let the major system as was operated for the last 60, 70 years as it is. We have not changed that. We have not touched that. We have not gone near to that. All that we have done is there are a couple of levels of agriculture. One is the straight agriculture, which has been practiced for over 7 decades. And that is that you do your produce and you go and sell it to the agriculture mandis that are there, the agriculture big markets, the wholesale markets that are there, on a rate that is controlled by the mechanism which is known as MSP.
Right.
And MSP is basically the minimum support price which the government purchases happens upon. Now, the government purchases ration grains from the farmer at a stipulated price because the government has to feed and give ration to everybody through the public distribution system.
Right.
Now, what we have said is there is a field in the agriculture, there is cooperative agriculture, there's a corporate agriculture, and there's a collaborative agriculture. Collaborative is where you are collaborating for agriculture. Cooperative is where you form a cooperative and do the agriculture. And then there is a corporate agriculture where you get into a contract and do farming. Now, all these things were not under any regulation till now. And it has been happening since 1980 that these agriculture reforms are being asked by various stalwarts of the farming community.
Right.
Now, what we have done is we have given these laws that are there only for those people who will go into these streams, not for the people who want to go into the regular,
Right.
regular long-term, the way the agriculture has been going.
Right. Raman,
those people who want to do agriculture as it was
Raman,
done
let's leave it at there. You have provided a lot of
it.
background because we do want to move the conversation along, and I will come back to you, of course, in just a moment. But Preeti, the laws would, in essence, make it easier, and Raman has just said this, make it easier for farmers to bypass government-regulated markets and sell the products directly to private buyers, in essence, cutting out the middleman, as Prime Minister Modi said. On paper, that doesn't sound too bad, does it? Why the fury on the part of the farmers?
No, on paper, it sounds fantastic. And there's a lot of propaganda which it is packaged in, and therefore it sounds very appealing to anybody who's looking at a fair economy, a growing economy. But the truth is that regulators are not the bad guys. Regulators are protectors of farmers. The APMC market has a protected regime for deciding the minimum support price in which the farmer sends his good. Now, despite the regulator being there, even today, farmers rarely get that MSP which the government declares. They sell their goods much, much lower. Now, in the APMC, they pay a certain tax when they make their sale. The traders are controlled to some extent. They can be delisted. Now, they're creating a parallel system outside the APMC, which there is no tax for the sale, where the price is not going to be controlled. So a corporate can contract a farmer to grow some produce, and there are service level agreements, okay? So the corporate is going to demand a certain kind of product. Now, in India, the reforms that we really need is reforms on technology, because our produce is not consistent, neither in quantity or in quality, because we are still dependent on nature. We are still using traditional methods of farming. And therefore, a farmer who is contractually bound to give a certain grade of, say, a pulse or a cereal and fails to do that will be in serious trouble. So one is that the APMC protection goes away of a minimum support price. The contract can be at any price that the corporate chooses. And the second is that there is no protection for a farmer whose produce doesn't meet the standard of the corporate. We have had in India a case where Pepsi sued farmers in the state of Gujarat, where our Prime Minister Modi was the erstwhile chief minister.
Right.
There are no mechanisms of protecting the farmers from corporates who decide to renegade on their deals. And in India, there is a huge issue of monopolies in almost every sphere, whether it is telecom, whether it is transport. In almost every sphere, we have monopolies. And the small farmers will get crushed in these monopolies. So it's a serious problem. And it is the most unfortunate thing is farmers are protesting and they are being called anti-nationals, they're being called terrorists, they're being related to foreign powers. That is the problem, the
Right.
right-wing governments see everyone as an enemy. These are their people. You need to talk to your
Preeti, I
people.
would
These are your
request you not
people.
Mohan, no, I'm
not
sorry.
Not to wash dirty linens.
I'm sorry.
It is not in the national interest to wash dirty linens. Let's talk on the basic.
Let me get we'll get to that in just a moment, Mohan. Let's sort out the
I
issues for
request
those
you
people.
to maintain
Sorry.
decorum.
Let's please sort out the issue for the international audience that might not be too familiar with this particular issue. Mohan, so we hear from what Preeti is saying that farmers are in essence are fearing that private companies will dictate the terms, that they don't have enough bargaining power to get the fair prices when negotiating with these private companies. Is that a concern? Is that a fear and a threat and a risk that is justified from the farmer's perspective?
No, I don't think it's justified because private companies are already buying from the market. We have most of the wheat we buy in the cities now is packaged wheat. We have packaged rice, and you have intermediate manufacturers, of pasta and all these things who procure directly from the farmers. So I think that system needs to be understood, that there is no exclusivity that you have to sell only to the mandis or to the government at MSP prices. Now, the problem here is, in Punjab, the agitation is something else. They fear that this is a way to eliminate MSP. And this is partly a self-inflicted injury by the government. Before you introduce legislation of this kind, you need to consult all the stakeholders, and you can't do things arbitrarily on your own, thinking that only you know what's good for people. The problem today is that, there's a matter of trust. The farmers in Punjab and in Haryana and in Western UP have lost faith in this government, have lost trust. They think that this government is beholden to corporate interests, rightly or wrongly, and they don't trust the government. Now, that is your basic problem. The main macro issues of this agricultural problem is this, that the government is committed to a regime where it buys high and sells low.
Right.
It buys at the highest price. The MSP procurement price is for wheat, it is almost 600 rupees more than per quintal than the market price.
Right.
1,300 rupees is the market price, and 1,900 rupees is the procurement price. So this kind of dysfunctionality also can't be there forever. You have a problem. You have a problem with oversupply. We have a problem with too many people working on land, too many small holdings. 83% of the holdings now are less than 1 acre.
Right.
All the farmers who are protesting there really are the farmers with surpluses.
Right. Now the protests, clearly, Raman, the protests have grown from day to day, from week to week. Are you surprised, concerned and surprised, how big these protests have eventually become? You sort of dismiss them as manipulated people from the inside and outside to cause political trouble. But at the end of the day, these are farmers, the backbone of the Indian economy, who are voicing their concerns.
You have to understand something. The sheer scale of what we are talking about, your population would be 8.4 crore people. We have around 14 crore 50 lakh farming families in India, which if you multiply by only 4 comes to around nearly to 60 crore people. Now, we have already declared, as a government, we have declared that one nation, one ration card. Earlier, the PDS system used to be state-wise, and you could only claim your PDS, public distribution system, grains through the state ration card. Now what we have done is we have created one nation, one ration card. That means anywhere, if you hold a ration card from X state, you can go to Y state and procure your PDS distribution. So food for all is a standard security that Indian government is giving to the underprivileged or to economically weaker section. Now,
Right, but my question
the
was...
point is, we have to procure as a government.
Right, but my question was
The point is, we have to procure as a government continuously. We will not be stopping. The population is going to increase, the procurement is going to increase, the MSP is going to increase. That has been committed by the Prime Minister of India, by the Agriculture Minister. It has already been committed. Now, the major issue is that in a nation so big, you have to look into the interest of all the 14.5 crore plus farming families. You just can't look after, say that you are looking after, let's say, 50 lakh people, 50 lakh families. You have to look after the rest of the 14 crore families that are there.
Right,
now,
but as a ruling politician and spokesperson for the ruling party, it must give you concern if that many people descend upon your capital in order to ask the government to repeal the laws. I mean, at the end of the day, this is a reality.
I'll respond to that. The point is that the government is not somebody who is not willing to discuss this. They had 5 or 6 major demands. Those 5 or 6 major demands, in ways discussed, has been more or less accepted, to the fact that a written assurance for the MSP or the various other things, whether it is going to the courts or about the land or about the finances, they've all been more or less accepted, even to the extent that the Supreme Court order, which was about burning of the stubble, has been looked into, and we have given them an assurance that we will look into it and create a law which is more...
right, but in essence, the protesters say...
about the farmer, and less be a penalty.
Right, but the protesters say, in essence, nothing short of the official annulment of the 3 laws will be able and enough to change their position. Preeti, we have a bit of a stalemate here. I mean, Raman said the government is not unwilling to talk. As a matter of fact, in all fairness, Prime Minister Modi has invited the farmers for talk and tried to gain out compromises. But the farmers are pretty uncompromising in this particular stance. They say, no, these 3 laws, they have to be done and done with. How do you solve this problem now at this particular juncture?
You're absolutely right. We've entered a stalemate. And as Mr. Guruswamy pointed out, the reason for this is because the laws were passed without consulting all the concerned parties. There was no discussion with the farmers. There was no discussion with the agrarian experts. So it was done in isolation by politicians alone. And therefore, there is no confidence amongst the people. No discussion in the cabinet too. So this kind of high-handedness in which the laws has passed has created distrust among the people, because we are already seeing over the last 6 years that this government is kinder to corporates than it is to the common man, and its schemes don't always work for the common man. And when we are saying that it is an issue of the farmers, we must realize this is an issue for all people of India, because prices are going to change very rapidly. I mean, the way when there are 2 separate markets, you're creating 2 systems. This is not one nation, one market. These are 2 markets. There is an APMC market, which is regulated, where the farmer has to pay a tax, but he is assured of an MSP or procurement by the government. There is an outside market where he is not assured of the price, but he's free of tax. So you're actually creating 2 very different markets. Maybe the bigger farmers will benefit from it, but the smaller farmers will be crushed. And this government has vocalized its attitude towards farmers. The former RBI governor had actually stated, oh, we need to dissuade people to stay in villages. We need them in the city as labor. So they actually think of farmers as labor, which they can use in the urban economy. And what we have in the urban areas is actually agricultural refugees. We saw during the lockdown, the refugees literally marching back, which is the longest migration that has happened in India since the partition in 1947.
Right.
So the treatment of people as fodder for corporate use is an attitude of the government, and therefore confidence among the protesters is not going to be easily got. The store will have to go.
Before I get to Mohan, Raman, I want to give you a chance just quickly to respond to this particular aspect of the conversation which Preeti said. Should the government have brought the farmers on board before passing the laws? Should there have been more consulting beforehand?
2-3 things. One, when she talks about the migration, she must not also forget, and you can study, the major population that migrated was towards Bihar, and Bihar, the government came into power back again, even after so much of propaganda that was there. Now let's talk about the basic issue, the same kind of laws where Preeti represents. Please, sir, please. The same kind of laws that Preeti is saying that are Victorian, the same kind of laws are there as part of the APMC, which is the Agriculture Produce Marketing Committee Act in Punjab, where they are the principal opposition. They have not opposed it, and those laws are prevalent since 2006. She can go and read them, or tell her party to read that part in Punjab. And last but not the least, let's come up to the basic issue of all the all people taking a stand that the government has not spoken. For the last 45 years, there have been discussions, committees after committees and committees over those committees, talking about agriculture reforms, and stalwarts who have worked with the farmers like Sir Chotu Ram or Devi Lalji or Mahendra Singh Takat or Mr. Joshi, these kind of people have given their recommendations to the government. So the government has looked into all those various committees' recommendations and then created this.
Right.
Now, the only point is the freedom to the farmer to sell where he feels comfortable has to be given. We have not removed the APMC at all.
Okay, so you're saying
in these talks with the farmers, we have also agreed
right.
that if you want the same kind of taxation,
right. So the talk has been, this
market.
issue has been on the table for quite some time, is what you're saying, and the farmers have been on board. Mohan, the question now, of course, is again the question: how do you break the stalemate? How do you see this going to play out?
Now you see, in 2013, the UPA government was planning to bring exactly the same laws. At that time, the BJP, which was in the opposition, made a hue and cry. We will oppose this. And the UPA government kept it aside. Now we have a pattern here. When the UPA government wanted to do GST, Modi protested. When the UPA government wanted to have labor laws, Modi protested. When they wanted to have land laws, Modi protested. Now they're trying to do the same thing, and the Congress has protested. They're being hoisted in the same petard. You have to get some kind of a consensus in politics, saying that these things are good for the people, they are good for the country, and therefore we should all act together. Here, there's no holds barred politics.
Right.
What you're seeing in Punjab is no holds barred politics, and I don't feel sad for Mr. Modi either, because he did exactly the same thing, and he's being paid back in the same coin. The country might go to dogs, and it is going to the dogs. Parliament hasn't met. Parliament is totally dysfunctional. These things are not discussed. Prime Minister Modi decides himself, and like he decided demonetization.
So these are passed by the House.
So
weren't these laws passed by the House? The upper and the lower.
They were
house
not passed. They were being introduced. Will you listen to me? They were planning to bring them in. It's in their manifesto.
Right.
BJP opposed it.
Sir,
all
that I'm saying is, were they not passed by Parliament?
Did you oppose GST?
Well, unfortunately, we are running out of time. But I think go ahead. Last sentence, Mohan. Yeah. We're out of time.
What you're having is a totally lopsided system. 60% of the procurement takes place in these three states of wheat: Punjab, Haryana, and Uttar Pradesh. There's no procurement in the rest of the country. States like Bihar, which are also big agricultural states, there's zero procurement. So procurement has now become a political gift to certain people in certain regions.
Right.
Now that also has to be addressed.
I think it's even throughout this discussion. I think it's clear where the sticking points are. Thank you, Preeti, Sharma, Menon, Raman Malik, and Mohan Guruswamy. Thank you so much for joining us and giving some insights and context to the farmers' protest in India. Certainly a topic that from the outset will be with us for some time to come. Thanks out there for watching. Hope to see you again next time.